Hey everyone, welcome to my new video. So Halloween is here, almost, but I wanted to do this a little bit earlier so you have some time to prepare your own artworks if you want. I wanted to be inspired by this scene I've done last year. It will be quite a lot to cover, and of course there won't be as detailed house or anything, but still this is a lot to cover in a short video, so I will have to go a little bit faster over some things. So let's not waste any more time and get to it. And remember, if you're new to the channel and you like to see tutorials like this in the future, hit that subscribe button. You will get a lot of stuff like this. And now let's switch to the layout workspace and we can start working right away. I will just start by adding a plane here and scaling it up 4 times. So S4, scale it up. I'm doing this in edit mode. And then extrude this a little bit so we have some base we are working on. And right now we can subdivide the top part and create some kind of terrain, but first I want to select this face, switch to the vertex select and press H to hide so we are not distorting the bottom vertices. And now in the vertex select I will enable proportional editing with O and just start grabbing up some bumps here and there, so this is not so uniform. And I don't want to do anything crazy here. Maybe add a little bit of randomness like this. Okay, and I will switch this to auto smooth and shade smooth. So this won't be too much of a low poly flat shaded thing. I want to do it smooth, like you can see here, where there are no like visible shading steps and stuff like that. So, and now we'll create the gate in the front. So shift right click to move the cursor and we can add the plane. Let's scale this down and I will disable proportional editing here. Let's scale this down and scale on the Y as well and extrude up. So we have a single brick here. And now we can modify this a little bit. So let's bevel some of these vertices. I'm using Ctrl B, then V, or you can use Ctrl Shift B if you want. And pressing double G to slide some of these vertices. Let me go to the local view by pressing slash. Okay, so that'll be base of a brick, and now we can select all. Let's look from the top and let's press Shift D, duplicate it, R90 to rotate 90 degrees and place it here. And now we can select all of these, Shift D, R180 and place it like this. So we have a loop here with the bricks, and we can now select all, press Shift D, Z and move it up. And we'll need to flip this, so we have some variation there. So let's press S, Y and -1. That'll flip this along the Y axis. And now let's select all of it and we can maybe modify this a little bit. And remember, we duplicated those, so you can do manual adjustments wherever you want. And now let's press A, let's press Shift D, Z and move this up. And I want to flip this on a Z axis, so SZ -1 to flip it and with like this, and we can rotate. And we'll need to flip this on Y as well, so SY -1. And we have some nice variation here, and the rest we can make with the array modifier. So let's add array modifier and relative offset on the Z axis, and let's turn off the offset on the X, and let's do 3 steps like this, and we can scale this down. Let's look from the side here and move it somewhere here, so we leave some room for the gate as well. Okay, something like this, and we can add a mirror modifier here and choose the terrain as a mirror object, but we want the Y-axis. Okay, Now we'll continue by using some of these bricks, so we can borrow it right from here. Press Shift D, P to separate. Now tab out, select the new object. We'll remove the array on the mirror modifier and move it out a little bit like this. And let's move it here in the middle on the x-axis. And we can start duplicating them. So I will just go to the front view, tab in for the edit mode, press Shift D, move it here, and rotate 180 on the z-axis. So there is that variation. And now Shift D, move it here, scale on the z, so sz minus 1. Let's move it down a little bit. And then I will hover here, press L to select linked, Shift D, move it up, and scale on the x-axis, so s minus 1. Okay, right now we can select all of those, press Shift D, Y, and move them here. And we can switch to the individual origins, so by holding period I will switch to individual origins, press S, Y, and minus 1, so we flip those. Okay, and we can select all, press Shift D, Z, move it up. And again, we can press S, Y, minus 1 to make a flip. And adjust a little bit. So remember, I'm trying to just create as many variations as possible, so it doesn't look uniform or anything. So far so good, I think. So we can move on and continue this in the edit mode. I will duplicate this once more, and now I want to leave out some of these bricks, so let's delete some of those. I don't want this to be like a full wall all over here. I want it to be like crumbled on the sides. So yeah, something like this, and we can now add the mirror modifier here as well. And add the mirror object. Okay, so far so good. And now let's create that gate. And I will move a cursor here and let's create a plane. Scale it down, rotate on the X or the Y axis rather. Let's look from the side. Let's bring it up by pressing G, then Z. And now select this edge at the top, bring it all the way up. And now we can subdivide. So let's select all, subdivide like this. Maybe not so much, so let's do it manually. I want 2 cuts here and 2 cuts here, something like this. And now I will move this down manually. Press G twice and create something like this. Okay, now we can add a skin modifier to that and select all and scale it down with Ctrl A. Now we'll need to fix this one here a little bit. So we can add a subdivision by pressing Ctrl 1 and then shade smooth. Or rather, we'll need to do this in the skin modifier like that, and maybe we can make it a little bit more narrow here. And let's add that mirror modifier like this. Okay, so that's the gate and the walls, and we'll need to modify those later. So if we cross-reference here, they're a little bit sloped and all distorted, and this is inspired of course by The Nightmare Before Christmas movie from the Tim Burton, and you know, that characteristic style with all those distorted objects. I really want to use this here, so we'll then use the lattice modifier to achieve this. But first I want to model the basic stuff, So let's go back and we can continue with some more objects. We can now create some stairs, so let's add the cursor right here, or maybe move it a little bit more further. And now we can start by adding a plane and go into the edit mode and extrude this. And I want to create steps in a little bit different way that I'm used to. Right now I won't use endgons because I want to later distort this. So I will just add some loops here, and then we can extrude these one by one. So I will select this loop here, extrude now here, and you get my point. I don't want to be accurate here, so it really doesn't matter that much. Okay, so this will be a base for our stairs. Now we can move this better in place. I want the camera to be looking from this side, so I want to move this a little bit more in the back here, like this, and make it a little bit smaller. Let's apply that scale, and I want to add some more loops here and extrude something in the back as well. Okay, now we can stylize this a little bit, so go to the vertex select, and we can first of all add some loops here and then start adding some bevel details. And we can shape this up a little bit by enabling proportional editing, switching back to smooth. And let's try to create that curvature. So I will select these faces here and try to move them like this. And that's what we are going for basically. So we can try to move some of these as well. So this is not looking so uniform. Okay, so far so good, and we can further modify this by doing some bisect, so it looks like it's carved from rock here. So let's select all and switch to the bisect tool, and let's do some cuts here. And now maybe add some variation here by switching the proportional editing to random. So yeah, something like this, just play around. And now I want to add a decimate modifier, so it's a little bit more clean, and I don't mind triangulation here. So let's see what this will do for us. I will definitely go with this, and now we can just enable auto smooth and shade this smooth, so we have those nice smooth sides. But here this is a little bit too much outside, so let's move it back a tiny bit here as well. And now let's add some rocks to the scene. So I will add a cube. Let's bring it up a little bit, and let's subdivide by pressing Ctrl 1, and let's apply that subdivision, going to the edit mode, scale it down, and we can continue working with the bisect tool. Okay, I think this will work. So let's move it down a little bit, let's scale it up and move here, and we can lay some rocks here at the base of the stairs, so it really looks like it's made from some natural rock formation here. Okay, I'm quite satisfied with the layout so far, so we can now move on and add some trees, and they'll be really easy to do. You just have to go to the preferences and activate the add-on add curve sapling tree gen, and what they'll do, if I move the cursor right here, we can press Shift A, curve, and you will see a sapling tree gen option here, and we can click this and it will create some trees for us. And luckily there are some presets, so we can choose some pine tree, I guess. So let's go for small pine. I like this here. And if you want, you can switch here from geometry to branch radius and try to play with the thickness of this. I will make this a little bit more thick. And yeah, this is our quick tree with the help of the sapling tree gen. Really useful add-on if you want to do just something like this here. And let's add some, like a main tree here and one smaller in the background. And we can tilt them a little bit. Okay, that looks great. And now for the house, let's move the cursor here and let's add a plane. We can leave the scale like this. We will maybe accommodate the stairs a little bit later for the house. Now let's just press E to extrude. Now we can select these two edges, right click and subdivide. They'll create this cut in the middle, and we can extrude this like that. And we can go really sharp with the roof here. I want to maintain that slender look, slender tall look. So let's go to the vertex select. We'll now join this, so we can better subdivide the bottom here. But first, let's look from the side, and let's press K for a knife, and by additionally pressing C and Z to cut through, we can do a cut here. That way we can do loops here as well, so that's really useful. Now let's do some loops here and some here, and some of those like that, and here on the side as well. And right now we can use this to our advantage. We can now just select some of these parts of the mesh and, you know, extrude them and stuff like that. So it'll be a little bit easier to carve different house parts from this kind of topology. Let's click here and Ctrl Shift here to select this patch. I will inset this a little bit and move it back. And I want to duplicate this and P to separate, and, you know, create some planks here. So select these edges, press Ctrl B to bevel with just one segment, something like this, and we can press X and delete these faces and extrude this out. And right now we can additionally move this a little bit outside. And now enable proportional editing and just have some fun with some irregularities and variations, and then bevel some parts. And this is maybe a little bit too wide, so we can additionally modify this here by selecting these phase loops and scaling them on Y. But first I'll need to switch to the median point, and let's scale them on Y. Something like this. And we can now select this loop by alt clicking here, press Shift D, P to separate again, and just, you know, make it go outside a little bit by scaling on X, and then Alt E to extrude inside, and press S for even scaling. So we have some nice door frame here, and we can continue by adding some of those details. And now let's move them around to give this that distorted look as well. We can reduce the fall off. Let's continue with the roof here. So go into the edit mode and Ctrl Shift click here to select this patch. We'll leave the other side for now, and let's press Shift D and P to separate. And now we can add a mirror modifier, switch to the Y-axis, and let's drag this down a little bit. So by pressing G twice, we can enable slide. By holding Alt, we can slide down a little bit. Okay, and now scale this on X as well. Let's give it some volume, so Alt E and extrude along normals. Fine, something like this. And now we can add a cursor here, add a cube, make it smaller and scale up like this. And let's subdivide this a little bit, so Ctrl R and increase the number of segments. So now let's add some more of these beams around the place. So it looks like an old building. Let's drag this up a little bit, and then don't forget to subdivide. We'll need this later. Okay, and now Shift D in the edit mode, and I'll move it here, maybe make it a little bit larger. Okay, and we can move one here. So go to the side view, Shift T, R 90 degrees, move it down and scale it up. Let's not forget to disable proportional editing. Move it down like this and towards the front a little bit. Now let's just finish some details like adding a window. I won't be cutting the window inside the structure. Instead, I will just add a plane here. Rotate 90 degrees and scale it down, scale it up a little bit. And then we can cut in the middle twice and move these vertices down. Select all, extrude, inset, and extrude down. So yeah, something like this, and we can additionally add some loops. So it will bend when we are bending the whole house. And we can now take this and press Shift D to duplicate, press Shift S and snap to cursor. I moved it here, so right now we just have to rotate this. Okay, and now some shingles, I guess, but let me make this a little bit wider. Okay, and now let's press Shift A, add a plane, scale it down, go into the edit mode, scale it down, tab out, and now we'll enable face snapping with rotation to target and individual elements, and press G, and by holding Ctrl we can snap it here. Now we can add some volume to it, so let's extrude this, cut in the middle, select this edge, press G and Y twice to enable local move. And let's create a shape like this. That'll do. And now by pressing Alt D and holding Ctrl, we can snap this wherever we want. And I just want to do a few of those here. I don't want to cover the whole roof. I just want the illusion. Okay, I guess this will be fine. And I want to do this quick on the other side as well, so I will use the mirror modifier for that. Add a mirror modifier with the y-axis and choose the house as the center of the mirroring, so you will see it will be there. And now let me just select over these shingles. Now Ctrl drag to deselect everything else, and with this one active, if you don't have it active, just shift click twice so it's highlighted yellow. And now we'll just press Ctrl L and link the modifiers here so they have the same modifier. Let's now prepare the scene a little bit better for the lattice modifier. So first of all, I want to select these shingles once again. Let's select everything else, and let's press Ctrl J to join them and apply mirror modifier. Now apply this mirror modifier here, and that was the last one, so I think we can join everything to house. So Ctrl J, and we have this as a single object right now. And now let's do the same with the wall here. So we can apply the area modifier and the mirror modifier, and mirror modifier for the wall. And let's leave the gate like this for now. And we can start by adding a lattice object. So shift right click here to move the cursor, shift A, and add a lattice object. Let's now look from the side, press GZ to move this up a little bit. Let's scale this on Y like this, and on Z as well, so we cover the area here for the wall. And now we can go to the object data properties. You can see the icon change. The lattice has its own properties, and we can set the resolution here to something, I would say 8 and maybe 3 here. And now select the wall, and let's add the lattice modifier, and we will choose the lattice object we just created. And now with this selected, we can start moving these points of the lattice in the edit mode, and let's enable proportional editing, and we can see how we can modify this. Let's increase the fall off here, and we can make some really crazy adjustments with this. And now we can add the same lattice modifier to the wall as well. So Ctrl L and link modifiers. And I think the same for the gate as well. So let's add this manually. And this way you can do really crazy adjustments with a set of objects or a single object, whatever you want. And I think this is great for scenes like this. And now we can do the same for the house. So select the house, move the cursor there, and add a lattice object. You can scale it up like this, move it up a tiny bit, scale on the Z, Okay, and now adjust the settings, do some more subdivisions here. Okay, and let's try to add the modifier. Pick the lattice object. Let's try to edit this. Looking good so far. We'll have to check whether the mesh breaks or not, but since we created the house with a little bit more dense geometry, this works just fine. So we can now enable the X-ray and start to move things around. So be something like this and a little bit towards the front, I guess. Okay, so that's for the lattice modifier so far. It's a little bit messy. I'm in a hurry here. Please forgive me if I skip over some key commands and stuff like that, and if I do something really quickly. This is a little bit larger scene for a short YouTube video like this, so forgive me if this has some rough edges, but so far you could see how you can prepare your meshes and then use the lattice modifier to create some crazy designs like this, and then we can enable auto smooth and shade smooth the whole house, and you can see how we have these nice lines here. So it's all starting to work together, and now we can add some materials and lighting, so we better see what we are doing. Let me reset the cursor to world origin. Now let's add a plane and scale it up, and I want to add a camera at this point as well. I want to see the final composition, and I don't want to use isometric camera for this because I think these kind of distortions can really benefit from a perspective. So let's press Shift A and add the camera. Now we can reset the rotation for the camera by pressing Alt R, bring it up a little bit, rotate on the X 90 degrees and rotate it towards the house and move it away a little bit. And now if we look through the camera, oh, it's rotated, so let's do R 180, GZ twice, and we can click lock camera to view in the view palette here. So this way now we can use the camera controls to position the camera, which is very convenient. And I want to modify the resolutions in the output tab and find something I really like. We can maybe play with the focal length. I want to go 35mm, so there is a little bit more of that perspective distortion, and I really like this view, so let's fix it like this. And now disable lock camera to view, and let's play with that house a little bit more. Okay, and now let's switch to the material preview and we'll add some colors. This won't be too colorful, so let's add the background material to the background and let's make this kind of a dark blue like this. We'll see later what works the best. And I want the ground to be in the shade of gray. Basically I want all of these to make in the shades of gray, because most of the painting here, if we cross check the reference, will be done with the lights. There's not much about colors on the objects themselves, so I'll just add this. I will call dark, or let's say gray, and then we can select the gray here as well and duplicate it so we get different numbers of gray in the scene and make it a little bit larger. Now for the rock, we can use the dark one, duplicate this, and make it even darker. And for the wall, we want something brighter, I guess. And here we want some kind of metal material, so let's bring up metallic property and a little bit darker. Okay, and I want trees to be really dark, almost black, like this. And for the house, let's select like the middle gray, and then let's do the roof. They'll be darker. You can just hover over these parts of the mesh, press L to select linked, and now we will add a new material, the darker gray material, and click assign. And then for these shingles, that'll be a little bit tedious to do. Okay, and let's add even darker, maybe. We'll see how that looks. And now for these beams, we want that darker gray as well. So basically for all of these separated parts, we want that darker gray. So it looks like this. And now for the door, let's do the dark one. And the windows will get a special material. We just need to click here and Ctrl Shift here to select the patch of faces. And with this new material slot, we'll create a new material. Let's call this window. I will switch this from principled to emission shader. And click assign. And now we can modify the strength of that to something like 5. Make it a little bit yellow. So this will be our light coming from the windows. And now let's add some lighting. So press Shift A, add a light. I will choose area light. And now bring it up a little bit. Switch the pivot point to 3D cursor, and let's rotate this on X and then on Z. Let's look from the front, so we want this facing the camera. Okay, and let's make it really strong, like 2500, and a little bit blue. And now let's see how this looks. So I will enable scene lights and scene world, and we can go to the render settings and enable ambient occlusion, bloom, and screen space reflections, so we have a better preview of what we are building. Right away I can see this won't work so much here, so let's move this tree where it's better visible, like this. And now I want to make this background to be infinite, so select the background, shift click the camera, and find the rotation here, and right click the Z, copy single to select it, so we have the same rotation as the camera. Now select the far edge, disable proportional editing, and let's press E, Z, and extrude this up and make this all a little bit larger. And now we can bevel this and make an infinite background like that, and shade smooth. Okay, this is starting to look a little bit spooky. Maybe I want to duplicate this light here, rotate it from the side a little bit, bring it down, make it larger so it's a little bit softer, and shine from the side like this. And let's make this a little bit stronger blue. Okay, and for these windows I want something really strong, like 50. Okay, and I want to modify the world settings as well to give this some ambience. So let's give the world a really strong dark blue color. We can then play with the intensity of this. And to bring out the silhouettes a little bit more, I want to do like a stylized moon This probably won't make any sense from like a realism standpoint, but it's just something to make the illustration pop out a little bit more, to look a little bit better. So let's move the cursor here and add a circle, and let's tab in. I'll press F to fill. Let's rotate this on the X 90 degrees, and I want to rotate this the same as the background. So shift click the background and copy singles to select it when it comes to Z rotation, and make this larger. So from the side here and create it somewhere here. So it kind of, let me switch to the medium point. So it kind of touches the house as well and brings out the silhouette. Okay, like that. And we can additionally add some fog here into the scene. So reset the cursor to world origin, add a cube, make it really large, something like this, and bring it higher. And let's call this fog here in the inspector, so it's easy to find later, and add a new material. Let's call that fog 2, and I will remove this principled shader here and add the volume shader, principled volume, and let's modify the density to something like 0.1. And let's look from the camera. This is more like it. Now let's go to the filters here and enable selectable filter, and we will disable this so it doesn't get in the way when we need to manipulate the scene, but we can still select it here in the outliner and modify the fog here. And that's exactly what I want to do. I want to modify this to give it a blue tone, and now let's support this a little bit better with a different blue color of the world. Okay, something like this. And now when it comes to lighting, I always like to paint the scene with some point lights. So I guess I imagine there's some torch or something behind here. So we can move the cursor there, and let's add a point light, and let's give it a strength of like 250, so it's a little bit stronger. And now make it strong orange color, maybe make it even stronger, like 500, but I can see right away that the fog is too thick, so I will have to reduce this heavily to something like 0.025. Yeah, that's much better. So it's only a light touch. You can see where the lights are, that the dispersion happens, but it's not like that strong. And we can hide the light here and create some interesting ambience here and contrast. And let's try to maybe make these lights a little bit stronger, more colorful. And for the moon, we want the emission shader, of course, with the yellow color. Let's go for 5s or something like that. Okay, so this immediately looks much better. We can go for the color management and give this medium high contrast look, or maybe a high contrast. Play with exposure a little bit. Okay, so I really like this so far when it comes to lighting. And now let's make this a little bit more interesting by adding some pumpkins here. So I will shift right click there, zoom in a little bit, and let's press shift A, and let's add the UV sphere. That's the basic object for the pumpkin. Let's set it to 24 segments and bring it up a little bit. And now let's switch this to medium point, scale it down a little bit like this, and now select the poles of the UV sphere, enable proportional editing, and scale them like this. Okay, and we can maybe bring this a little bit more up. Okay, and now I will select these loops around. So alt click here, and by holding shift we can select all of these loops and scale them out. And disable proportional editing, S and Shift Z to scale them out like this, and we can additionally bevel them if you wish with just one segment, so we have a little bit of a geometry there. And now we can select all, press M and merge by distance in case we merged some of these vertices there. And now we can go and enable auto smooth and shady smooth. So this will be a nice little pumpkin. And for the face part, we can like literally carve this out. So let's go to the vertex select, press K for knife, and we can start carving the pumpkin right away like this. And you can just select these faces and remove them. Now select K again. Let's make the other eye. X and delete those faces. And now the mouth. And now we can extrude some teeth if you want, so just select some of these edges. Okay, so that's our pumpkin, and right now we can add a solidify modifier, but let me rotate this a little bit so we better see what we are doing. And let's add a light inside the pumpkin, so Shift A, light, point light, and bring it up so we see what we are carving out. And let's modify the color to something strong orange, and let's ramp this up to something like 50. And now we can add a solidify modifier, bring this up. Okay, so far so good. I think we miss one teeth here, so I will fix that right now and add an orange color like this, and make it maybe even more brighter. Now let's parent the light to the pumpkin. Let's scale it down and find some nice placement. Okay, so I really like the layout so far, and now since we auto duplicated these pumpkins, you can select just one light and make it stronger. It will make it stronger for all of these. So I really like this, but there's one little thing missing in the end. Let me hide the lattice objects. I think they clutter the scene quite a lot. So I miss one little thing here, and that's a little bit of fog, but not like the volumetric atmospheric effect, but really some kind of smoke effect on the ground that simulates that ground fog. So let's reset the cursor to world origin and we can make some smoke. First, let's add a plane as always, and let's scale this up so we cover the ground and move it down a little bit here. Okay, and now we'll go object, quick effects and quick smoke, and that created the smoke domain object as well. So we have the kind of a smoke emitter here at the bottom, and then we have the smoke domain here. and we can modify this by making it higher a little bit. And let's just set it up. First we can play the animation and see what that smoke does. Probably you will have to play the whole animation until it starts happening. Yeah, you can see it right now. There's some smoke in place, and let's reduce this to 100 frames. I don't want to wait so long for the whole animation to cache. Okay, so this will be our base, but right now we'll need some kind of turbulence there, so we can press Shift A and add the force field, and let's add turbulence. Let's move it up a little bit, like here, and now we can go to the physics settings and set strength to something really strong like 20, and let's see what it does. And let me check out the domain object here. I'm quite satisfied with the settings right here, with the 32 divisions. Of course, if you want like a more detailed smoke, you can add a noise and something like that. We'll see how this looks by default with the turbulence. So let's now play this once again. Okay, so far it does literally nothing, but let me scale this down and move it a little bit more here in the back. We can just bake this. Yeah, and this looks a little bit more turbulent now. So we can just use the first few frames here to really simulate some smoke happening over the ground there. So the switching to final and baking it really helped re-evaluate that cache. Maybe if we now switch to the replay, it will start to act accordingly. Looks like it. So far so good. And now we can have a render preview. And again, as I said, I've already set up some settings here for the EV, so we have a nice preview, but we haven't seen it actually in the cycles here. So I will grab the box around the camera with the Ctrl B. So we limit our view and now switch this to cycles, GPU, and with viewport denoising, I really want to see how these scenes look like so far with that smoke. Basically, I really like it. It's not much to see right now because the samples are really slow with all of that volumetrics and the fog and the smoke simulations and stuff like that. But I will render this out and see if it's any good. Let me just quickly do the compositing settings for the denoising. If you're already running the Blender 2.9, you probably don't have to do this. The denoising is set up somewhere here in the render settings or the view layer settings. So I have yet to update and check it out. Okay, so this is the final render. It took a little bit longer. It took like 11 minutes for me here. Which is quite longer than I'm used to. That's mostly due to those volumetric effects and that smoke. You can see the smoke turned out really nicely. I had to ramp up the render samples to 512, and for the smoke settings I had to enable that noise, so it has a little bit of a structure. But all in all, I think this turned out really nice. So yeah, this is your Halloween scene this year. I hope you liked it. If you're new to the channel and you like to see content like this in the future, please hit that subscribe button and the bell button so you get notified when I release something new. And thank you all for watching and have a wonderful day.